Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Power of Our Story. I'm David Perez here with Sarah Carell, the founder of the Power of Our Story. And tonight we have with us Nate Fisher. Nate is a 9-year law enforcement officer veteran, a 19-year U.S. Air Force veteran who's still serving in that capacity as well. Nate started his childhood dream of becoming a police officer in 2008, and through many experiences started to develop PTSD and secluding himself from the world. In June of 2016, his beat partner was killed in the line of duty, and at that same time, he was also dealing with his failing marriage. Feeling like he had lost everything one night during an argument with his spouse, Nate had attempted to take his own life. He then turned to alcohol to bury the pain of the guilt from his partner's death and the guilt of trying to end his own life. It wasn't until he met his fiancée that his life had changed. Through working with horses, Nate has gotten his life back. And even without knowing it, Nate has been receiving therapy through that process. Now he goes and tells his story to different police departments and agencies and speaks at different conferences, doing his part to end the stigma of mental health. Nate has even started his own podcast, Surviving the Streets. He now serves those that also serve. So attached to Nate's profile, we have his podcast information of Surviving the Streets. Can be found on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, or GoFundMe. Nate, welcome. You have an incredible story to tell. We all look forward to hearing it, and the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, awesome. Well, I guess I'll start from the beginning. When I was
Always a
growing
good
up,
place to
yeah,
start.
when I was growing up as a kid, there's three things I always wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to join the military. I wanted to go in outer space. I'm still waiting on that third one. I did apply to NASA back in 2009, 2010. That I'm still waiting for a call back. So we'll see if that happens anytime soon. But when I was a kid, I wanted to do these things, but I was always a small kid. I grew up playing sports and all that, but I was always really small. Uh, I was in college when 9/11 happened, and then I just felt the need to do something about that. Like the urge to serve kept coming up. So in 2003, I joined the military. So I joined the Air Force because at that time I was I'm 5'10", but I was about 115 pounds back then. So I was really small. So I chose the easy route and went to Air Force. But I was also smart, so for all you guys that are not Air Force, I'll use small words so y'all can understand me. So I joined the military. In the Air Force, I was on the Predator drones. I worked on those things. At that time, we were in the only unit in the entire world that had the drones that did Preds. So our deployment tempo was always going. It was 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. So we're constantly deploying, constantly having to go overseas. Hard to build any type of relationship other than with the people that you serve with. During that time, I really wanted to do more with my life. I hated working on aircraft. I wanted to be more out on the front line. So I tried to cross train in some combat jobs, but they're like, no, you're in a high demand field right now, and so you have to stay with the drones. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I just got out. I got out of active duty. I went straight into the Air National Guard. As soon as I got out in 2008, I was like, all right, I've done the military thing. Let's go do the cop thing. So I started applying to police departments here in the state of Texas. I got hired on in the Dallas area, and I started my career doing that. While I was a cop, I also became a SWAT member and did all the cool stuff. The area I worked at in the city I worked in, let's just say it was one of those areas that had like the $30 a night hotels. So it had all the great clientele that you would expect that would come with the $30 a night hotels and that type of environment. So I was constantly getting into fights. And when became a cop, when I started at the military, I was 115 pounds. When I became a cop, I gained some weight. I was 125 pounds. So I got tested a lot physically. I'd get on a scene, people always talking crap to you because you're a cop. And then they see, oh man, he's not big at all. I can get away from him. And so the fight would always be on. So it was not uncommon for me to have a fight almost every day. And during those fights, people are reaching for your guns, they're reaching for knives. There's a couple of times where I'll be fighting with one guy, and then his buddy jumps on my back to where now I'm fighting two people. And if you've ever been a cop and you got the taser, you had to go through the taser training, and you actually got tased, 5 seconds is a very long time. A lot of those fights, like granted, when I'm fighting two people at one time, it might only last 10 seconds, but that's a long time. And that stuff's just started eating away at me. I got to the point where I didn't want to be around anybody because I didn't feel like I could trust anybody. So I really started secluding myself from society. And one of the real big tipping points for me whenever I started secluding myself was I went to the car wash where our city had all of our patrol cars washed and stuff. We had a contract with them. I was like, well, if the city trusts them with our squad cars, I can take my car. And I went there, and while I was waiting for my car to get washed, there was a guy I recognized. I We got into a tussle probably about 3 or 4 months prior to that, and he saw me, started obviously he's like, "Hey, all right, you know what? You don't have your stuff now. You know, what do you got? What do you got?" He's trying to come up at me, bow up at me. So I stand up, I pull my gun out because as an officer, you always carry off duty as well. So I pulled my gun out and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm ready to go when you are." Of course, everyone in the car wash area, eyes are getting big because the guy just pulled his gun out. And of course, the guy walked away. I pulled my badge. I was like, "It's okay, guys. I'm a cop." It was someone I arrested not too long ago. So they're okay. And of course, I never went back to that car wash again, not unless I was in uniform. So once that happened, I really was like, okay, if you're not police and if you're not military, I am not talking to you at all. So I continued my career, started getting some very good experience, and getting a very good reputation. And during all this time, I ended up meeting meeting somebody, and we got married. And right after that marriage, we got pregnant right away. And also during this time, while I was still serving in the Air National Guard, I transitioned from aircraft maintenance to a combat role, to a job called Tactical Air Control Party, TACPs. They're the guys that go out and basically whenever shit hits the fan, they call in the airstrike. So I was able to transition to a dream job that I wanted. So now I'm doing two dream jobs. I'm a cop, I'm a SWAT guy, and I'm in the Air Force doing cool guy stuff. I feel like my career is solid, and I'm like, man, I'm running high. I'm loving every second of it. And then I got married, and instantly with my marriage, like as soon as we got married, things just started going bad. And I always tell everybody whenever I tell my story, there's always three sides to every story. If you're a cop, you know this, especially when you go out on domestics. There's his side, her side, and the truth is always in the middle. It just so happens that my side is also the truth side. So we'll just go with that. But she is she is the mother of my child, so I do have a lot of respect for her. And we are civil now. But things got started getting real bad with my marriage. And I wasn't the best husband. I wasn't the best father. Uh, she ended up moving down to the Houston area. So I stayed in the Dallas area because the Dallas area just paid so much better than the Houston area. So I stayed up there to continue to work. So on a good month, I would see my family on a 2 week period, maybe 2 days. The rest of the time I'd be at work. I'd probably work 80 to 96 hours a week. I would sleep at work. That way I didn't have to worry about driving to my mom's house and crashing on her couch. I could get an extra hour, 2 hours of sleep if I slept at work. That way I can get up and work another overtime shift or pick up a part-time job somewhere so I can just keep making more money so I can provide for my family. So I was never home. And there's times where there's a couple of months where I never got to go home because on my days off, we'd have a SWAT call, or I'd have to be gone with the military with a deployment, or go keep up my currencies with airborne and all this other stuff I had to do. So I was a very absentee husband and a very absentee father, and that really weighed down on the marriage as well. So things with the marriage aren't going good. I'm secluding myself from everybody but police officers and military guys. I couldn't even stand to go out and go grocery shopping. I was always looking over my back because it seemed like every time I was out, I was getting into a fight. So I have all this stuff building up, and I'm doing everything I can to just keep pushing forward. But I started to love being at work more than I love being at home. Because now I got to the point now where when I went home, it was always a fight. There was always something going on. And as first responders, and you understand, like, if you've had a rough day or a rough week, sometimes you just want to go home, sit down, and stare at a TV screen. It doesn't even matter what's on. It could be Jersey Shore or it could be, Looney Tunes. It doesn't matter what's on. You just want to stare at something and not think. And I wasn't able to get that. I wasn't able to get to where I could decompress from my weeks of work, weeks of dealing with people that want to just do nothing but hurt me, people that are lying to me all the time, seeing dead kids, people getting beat up, all that stuff. After a while, it just got to the point where I felt safer being at work than I did at being at home because at home, where I was supposed to be safe, I didn't feel like I was safe anymore. And I couldn't be a cop at home. So I started working more that I could. The marriage, it really started. It took a big big drop off. So I ended up telling my wife at the time, "Hey, I'm going to leave my military unit, being a TAC P, so I don't have to be gone as much, so I can be home." And she's like, "Okay, sounds good." So I left one of my dream jobs so I could be home, try and be home and fix my marriages more than where I have been. So I left one of my dream jobs, and I felt upset about that. I didn't like that, but I knew I had to do that for my family. Well, that didn't help fix the problem because even whenever I'm coming home, I still don't want to be involved with anybody or anything because I want my time. I need time to decompress, and there's still fights going on whenever I'd get home. So I just kept going, staying at work, doing what I can to provide for my family. And I knew things were getting bad, and I knew things. I didn't really see like the mental stuff that was going on with me, with my how it was bad being secluded from society and always like checking my back and stuff like that. I just thought it was normal for what cops were supposed to do. So as time went on, I'm still trying to work my marriage. I'm still being gone a lot with the military. I'm still going on SWAT call outs and all this stuff. I get sent down. I go down for my weekend duty with the military because in the guard, you do the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So I'll go down there one weekend to do our drill, and I get told, "Hey, call your employer. You're not going back." I was like, "Okay, like what's going on?" Like, "Well, you're about to go to Turkey. You're going to leave in about 3 days. You're going to go to Turkey because at that time ISIS was right there in Syria, causing a lot of mayhem. So they wanted us there in Turkey, right along the border of ISIS, or right on the border of Syria." So I told my spouse, "Hey, I'm leaving, but when I come back, I really want to make this. We really need to make this marriage work. So when I come back, I'm going to leave my police department and find a police department down here in the Houston area." So she's like, "Okay, great, thank you." So I go on my deployment. I get back. I start looking for departments down here. And at this time, my spouse, she was a stay-at-home mom because we had a son together, and I didn't want him to be in daycare for the first 2 years of his life. I wanted him to be home with his mom. So I tell her, "Hey, for me to do this, you have to get a job." So she's trying to look for one, or so she says. So I make the transition down. Now, just in salary alone, I lost $25,000 a year just in salary. My bills didn't change either. Now, in part-time jobs where I was making $30 to $40 an hour, and the new area I was at, you got lucky if you could find a $20 to $25 an hour. So overall, I was losing close to $50,000 a year when I made this move. So now I'm having all this financial burden put on me. Um, but within the first month of being at the new department, I was going through their in-service academy. I get an IA complaint on me because I get into an argument with my spouse, and she calls the county on me, and they come out, and she's trying to tell them that I was abusing her and everything. So I went through IA and went through all that stuff. Came out that I did nothing wrong. So now I already have this black cloud over my head at this brand new department. Because, oh great, he's been here for a month and he's already in IA. So during this time, this first year of being with the department, I was staying at my home, and then I was staying at my buddy's house. I was flip flopping back and forth depending on how big of a fights that we were getting into, because I wanted to work on my marriage. It was very important to me. My mom and dad had a wonderful marriage, and that's what I wanted. So I'm trying to work. Um, the area I moved to, the area I left, I worked 10-hour shifts, and a slow day was 30 calls for service. I moved to an area where I was on a 12-hour shift, and a busy day was 3 calls for service. So I was going insane. And I was one of those guys, like, I loved getting foot chases, car chases, going after bad guys. And I worked the not so great area to where you have to speak to them a certain way for them to understand you. Well, you can't speak that way to people that make $250,000, $300,000 a year. They will end up calling and complaining on you. So that they don't really like you to use certain language with them. So I was trying to deal with that, learn how to readjust, because I always tell people I was a ghetto cop. I loved working the ghetto. And then you move me from the ghetto to an area where, it's very nice homes and people that have very good jobs. I had a hard time transitioning, but I'm still doing it. My marriage isn't getting any better. It's actually getting worse, but I'm still trying to work on it. During all this time, in 2016, I get assigned a rookie to my beat. He's already gone through the academy. He's gone through the field training. So he's gone through all of his training, and they signed him off, say he was good to go. But my sergeant and my lieutenant came up to me. He's like, "Hey, Fish, you got the most experience of anyone else on our squad. We're putting him with you so you can watch over him. Take him under his wing, take him under your wing, make sure he's okay." So yeah, man, I got this. Don't worry about it. So we go out. I go to a couple of calls with them and stuff. I try to show them how I like to police, because how I police was, not everyone deserved a ticket, not everyone deserved to go to jail. There's other ways of solving things, and I was trying to show them that's how I did stuff, and it usually helps with the community when you do stuff like that. So we're getting to know each other. He's still very green, and then on June 11th in 2016, we get called to a house for a noise complaint. Now, that's one of those things. I've always handled noise complaints by myself. There's no sense of having 2 officers go out, just say, "Hey, turn your music down," type of thing. But I kept him coming with me. We get to the house. Turn out this one guy, he Airbnbs his house to like rappers and stuff for big house parties. And the community they're getting fed up with it. So they gave us a call. So we get there, I knock on the door, and I'm trying to tell them, "Hey, you need to turn down the music. You got neighbors and stuff." The people at the party gave us nothing but disrespect. So I was like, "Okay, guys, like if I have to come back out here, then I'm gonna have to take action. Like, I'm not gonna put up with this." So I gave them an option. I gave them a chance, and we left. Now that day also was the very first time that it was a slow day at work, and it was the very first time that me and my partner got to sit down and have lunch together. We took our lunch at the same time, sat down, and I contacted my sister Beats and stuff like that. Say, "Hey, can y'all just watch our area and stuff? We're going to take lunch together if y'all are good with that." Though, yeah, go ahead. So we actually got to sit down, and I got to know him on a personal level that day. I got to learn about his fiance, about his kid, about his family. He used to be a TSA agent before he became a police officer. So I got to learn a lot about him. And we stayed there. We cleared our lunch, but we stayed there and kept talking. We probably talked for a good 2 hours. Like I said, it was a slow day. And then finally, I looked at the clock and said, hey, okay, we should probably get back out there and try and find some bad guys or something. So we get out there and we start patrolling the streets. Then on June 12th at around 0300, we get called back out to that house that had the noise complaint. So I'm like, all right, I'll go out there. I was like, I'll leave my partner coming to me, just so he can get some more experience with dealing with people that can that just disrespect us. So I kept him coming. I'm parked down that house. I'm parked down the street from the house, and I'm sitting there waiting for him. A couple of other officers show up because they know, oh, Fisher's about to have some fun. We're going to be a part of that. So they show up, and we're all just chit chatting like officers do, standing outside our cars waiting for my partner to show up. It's taking a little while, so I'm like, hey guys, let's just walk down there. That way we can start solving the situation for the neighbors. So as soon as we start walking down there, dispatch clicks on the radio, and they say, hey, be advised, we're getting reports of a vehicle accident involving an officer, and the officer's unresponsive. They gave the location. As soon as they gave the location, my gut instantly told me it was my partner. I knew right then and there who it was. So we take off, we run to our cars, we take off down the street. I end up passing the other two officers while we were driving there. And I was the second one on scene. I believe I was the first one to my partner. So I run up to him, and I've been on a lot of fatal accidents and stuff, and I know what a body looks like whenever it's been in one of those. And I ran up to him. I could see the bright red blood coming out of his ear. I'm yelling at him. He's not responding. I reach my hand in to check for a pulse. I felt a pulse. I was like, oh crap. And so I get on the radio. Hey, I got a pulse. I got a pulse. And as soon as I got off the radio, I could still feel the pulse. And I'm thinking to myself, what? And I realized my adrenaline was so high and I was just so amped up that I was feeling my own pulse through my fingers. So I took a big breath in, try to calm myself down, reach back in to feel for a pulse. I couldn't feel one. I knew he was gone right then and there. I mean, I knew he was gone whenever I came up and looked at him, but whenever I felt a pulse, it was 100%. Like I knew he was gone. As soon as I didn't feel a pulse, I got on the radio. Hey, I don't feel a pulse anymore. I don't feel a pulse. As soon as I said that, guilt kicked in right there, because a noise complaint I can deal with by myself, and I always deal with those by myself. But I kept my partner coming anyways, so I felt guilty because I should have disregarded him. So I immediately started feeling like I killed my brother. I went and sat down on the curb, and I couldn't move. I just sat there. The other officers are trying to get him out. Fire shows up, and I have to hand it to the fire guys. They did a great job. They knew everyone was amped up and emotional, so they were just handing the officers the tools to do what they needed to do to try and get them out. They weren't trying to take charge of the scene like if it was a regular civilian or something. They just let the cops do what they needed to do. Now, the only time that they stepped in was whenever they had to use the jaws of life to get them out. So they brought that in. They brought the jaws of life in, and they were able to cut them out. And they airlifted them to the hospital, and that's where they pronounced him dead. Was at the hospital. So I ended up going to the hospital. They had him set up in his own room, and so I went in there and closed the door behind me. I said my goodbyes to him, and I apologized for what I just did to him. I apologize that that I didn't disregard him, and now his fiance and his kid no longer have him. So I said my goodbyes. And I walked out of the room. Someone came up and they're like, "Hey, we need someone to go sit with the suspect." She, the suspect's in the emergency room. No one wants to do it. No one wants to raise their hand. A couple people kind of looked at me, so I was like, fine, I'll go. That was a bad mistake. As soon as I got there, I'm watching the medical personnel work on the person that just killed my partner. So now I'm getting full of anger, and all I want to do is go in there and start pulling plugs. Luckily, a buddy of mine who's a state trooper, he walks in and he's like, "Hey, Fish, what are you doing here?" Well, someone's got to be with a suspect, and he kind of knew what was going on. And he's like, "Hey, leave." He's like, "I got this. Don't worry about it. I'll stay here with the all suspect until the paperwork gets done. I got this. You need to go." So I left. Went home. During this time, every time I closed my eyes, I could see my partner in the car. I could see the bright red blood coming out of his ear. So I couldn't sleep. Also, this week that this happened, I found out that my wife was leaving me for somebody else. So now I just lost my partner. Now I'm losing my family all at once. So I'm not sleeping. So I turn to alcohol to try and help me sleep. So if I can't sleep, I'll just drink myself till I pass out. But we all know, if we've all, especially if you've been in the military, I know you've at least passed out from alcohol once. You don't get the right sleep from that at all. So I end up going to work, and I must not look like someone that had their stuff together, because my sergeant looked at me and was like, "Hey, you haven't been sleeping, have you?" I was like, "I wouldn't call it sleep, but yeah, my eyes close every now and then." He's like, "You need to go home." He's like, just leave." I looked down, I was like, "I don't have vacation time. I don't have sick time saved up right now." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We're not going to charge you. You just need to go home." I was like, "All right, thanks." So I went home. I wish I would have stayed at work, because when I went home, I got into an argument with my wife. It was pretty well heated. And during this whole time, after my partner was killed and finding out that my marriage was over, if I was driving on a bridge, I just wanted to drive myself off the bridge. You know, whenever I drank to pass out, I would hope I wouldn't wake up. So I'm getting into this argument with my spouse, and it's getting pretty heated. And I see my off-duty weapon on my nightstand. Now I carry a Glock. I've never had issues with Glocks, and as a cop, I was always trained to keep a round in the chamber. So we're getting into a fight, and I look at my weapon, and I'm like, "You know what? I'm just done. I can't do this anymore." So I reach down, I grab my weapon, look at my spouse, put the gun up to my head, and I pull the trigger. Click. It didn't go off. So it kind of shocked me a little bit there for a second, because it didn't go off. But I was dead set. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to deal with the guilt. I didn't want to deal with the anger. I didn't want to deal with any of it. So I did what I was trying to do. I slapped, rack, and I went to go do it again. I was determined to get it done. As soon as I slapped and racked it, I don't remember if a round came out. I can't remember that at all. But I know I always kept a round in my chamber. That's just standard procedures. So I slapped rack, and I went to put the gun up to my head again. At that time, my spouse ran up, grabbed the gun. Um, I didn't realize this until about 6 months into telling my story. But the room I was in the master bedroom whenever I attempted this. My son was sleeping in the room directly above me whenever I did that. And whenever I realized this about 6 months into telling my story, that hit hard for me. So I had to kind of deal with that while I was started telling my story. But I ended up leaving, got in the truck. I went to a hotel parking lot and tried to sleep it off there. So now my marriage is ending. Um, I ended up getting, they call it a deployment, but the military sent me to Sicily for 4 months. So it was more like a vacation, which was pretty nice. Um, but I was the lead guy for the job I had. So I made sure I was doing the job. I was concentrating on work, make sure the mission was getting done. But then on my days off, I would binge drink. And I was drinking a lot. Uh, and when you drink, your lips get a little loose, so you start talking a lot of crap. So a lot of people started hearing stuff that, like, oh man, fish isn't doing that good. But no one really said anything. So we get back from our deployment, or whatever, and then I move in with uh, my buddy's house, and I'm sleeping on his couch. And I'm still being a cop, but when I'm on my days I wasn't working, I was in the garage drinking. As soon as I'd wake up, I'd go sit down. There's a fridge in the garage. I always made sure it had beer in it. I'd sit down and I'd start drinking as soon as I'd wake up. Now, the thought process is going on in my head. I was like, well, this ain't good if I'm drinking alone. Alcoholics drink alone. I need to go meet people and drink with people. 'Cause alcoholics don't drink with people, only drunks do. Drunks are okay, alcoholics aren't. So that was my thought process. So this has been almost a year since my partner has been killed at this point now. Um, so I get on the phone and I start doing the whole swipe left, swipe right, and stuff like that, trying to meet people to go out and drink and have a good time with. And that's how I ended up meeting my fiance. So we go out to dinner and we're talking. If you talk to her, it is the worst first date ever. Because I was still a cop. I'm actively listening, but apparently I had like the cop face on. My arms are kind of crossed, like you do, like on the street. But I was actively listening to her. She says it was a horrible date, but I got her hooked on me because since I was a cop, you can get free coffee, and she likes coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I was like, I get free coffee, so I can give you my coffee. So I hooked her that way. So she's like, all right, sold. I'll keep dating you. I need some free coffee in my life. So we started talking a little bit more, but within 2 weeks, I ended up leaving the police department. Um, during the time during all this time whenever I was still serving as a cop, my productivity went down dramatically. I was always one of those go-getter guys, and I got to the point where I did absolutely nothing unless they called me to do something. During that time when I was doing nothing, I was sitting at the crash site trying to figure out what I did wrong. So I ended up leaving the police department, mainly just because I needed money from the divorce I just went through. So I became a military contractor. But when I left the police department, I knew I could never be a cop again. And that was hard because that was the other dream job I had. The other dream job I wanted to do when I was a kid. And I knew once I left, I could never do it again because every polygraph I went to has always asked me, have you ever had any suicidal ideologies? And I just attempted suicide not too long ago. So I left that knowing I can never pursue my dream ever again. And that was hard. So I became a military contractor and I was gone for 3 to 4 months at a time. I was still dating my fiance. Her name's Sharon. I was still dating Sharon at the time. She was okay with not getting free coffee anymore. So we kept dating. Then I'd be home for about 30 days at a time. During those 30 days, I was spending around $300 a day at the bar. Not every other day, every single day I was at the bar, spending around $300. And that's not including the times that me and Sharon would go out and have a good time. So there's nights where I would probably spend close to $1,000 on alcohol because I'm also going out and having a good time. But she didn't really know. I hit it very, very well. So after a while, one thing I gotta say, Sharon is an equestrian. So she that's one of those big words for you other military guys. Equestrian is like another horse. It's like a word for horse. She's not a horse, but she works with horses. So she manages a barn and trains horses. So she started having me come out to the barn with her. I was like, yeah, I'll come out, give me something to do while I'm home. And I go out and I would start shoveling horse crap and stuff like that. And I'm out there, I'm, trying to brush the horses, clean out their feet and everything. I started noticing the horses, I didn't think the horses liked me. I had a hard time having them come up to me. Uh, and I really noticed that like when if I was having a real bad day, like my anxiety was ramped up or my depression was really kicked in that day, I couldn't get near a horse at all. Um, so it turns out that horses are kind of like dogs. Like a service dog can pick up your emotions and everything, and they know when something's wrong. They'll come to you, so they can help take care of you. Horses, they can pick up all that stuff too, but they don't want anything to do with you. So I started noticing this, and without knowing it, so I could help out at the barn. I had to learn how to control myself, how to control my emotions, how to control my anxiety, so I can help at the barn. And I started noticing that my bar tab really started dropping dramatically to the point where I really wasn't drinking anymore. Even my mom fell in love with Sharon because she's like, Sharon brought my baby back. So through working with the horses, without even knowing it, I was getting therapy. And there is a thing called equine therapy out there. I didn't know anything about this. So I'm getting better by dealing with the horses. And I'm able to really control myself, learn how to breathe properly and all that stuff so I can go and brush the horses. And then I bring it up to Sharon. I was like, hey, for the longest time, they didn't like, sometimes like they don't want to come near me. And she's like, oh yeah. And she explained the whole, they're like dogs, but the dog comes to you, horses will run away from you. So she explained all that to me. It's like, okay. She's like, well, what's going on? I was like, oh, no, nothing. But Sharon is an open book and she's very, very brave about it. And she ended up telling me that she had a suicide attempt before we met, about a couple of years before we met. And she was just open about it. She was able, and she just talked to me like it was nothing. So I ended up opening up to her about my suicide attempt. She showed me it was okay to talk about it by by her telling me her story. So I started telling her about my stuff. And what made me realize that she was definitely a keeper is when we're in bed and with PTSD and stuff, you have nightmares and stuff like that. I would punch and swing every now and then in my sleep, and I guess I decked her pretty good. Now the jolt woke me up, not the impact of my fist hitting her, but just the jolt. So I woke up like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll go sleep on the couch. Like, no, 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 stay here. And she just moved in closer. She's like, we're going to get this. We're going to get through this together. So she just moved closer. Now she moved closer because she understands that when you're really close to someone, it's really hard to hit them. So she did that tactfully. Yeah, she used good tactics on that one. But she's like, no, we're getting through this together. And I was like, man, wow, I've never really had anyone that really cared for me like this. So we continue our relationship, and I start talking about about equine therapy and stuff. How um, we want to do something for first responders. When she first came out, I was like, yeah, I always want to do something for veterans. I was like, yeah, that's great. I was like, but there's a lot of stuff out there for veterans. There's really nothing out there for first responders. And we even did like a Google search. We couldn't really find anything. Everything we found was for veterans. So we're like, okay, yeah, we need to do something for first responders. I was like, well, I think the first step is for me to tell my story. Like, I need people to hear this. And I'm still serving at this time. And so it took me a year to build up the courage from the time I was like, I want to tell my story and get it out there. It took me a year to build up my courage to go ask. Because in the military, if you have any type of mental health stuff going on, they can kick you out and you like medically discharge you and stuff. And that's one of the main reasons why I never sought help whenever I was going through everything, because I didn't want to lose my badge and I didn't want to get kicked out of the military. So I was completely alone in all this. So after about a year, I remember I ended up getting a pretty good rapport with my commander. So I was in the gym one time working out, and the gym is a big stress relief for me. That's where I do a lot of my thinking and stuff is in the gym. And I'm working out and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. So I go straight into my commander's office. I'm covered in sweat. I'm smelling like God knows what. I go in, I close the door. I was like, sir, we need to talk. He's like, oh shit. All right. We need to talk about fish. So I sit down and I tell him a little bit about my story. I was like, but I was like, I'm okay now. But I want to help other people. And I think how to start is by telling my story to let them know that they're not the only ones going through it. So he's like, you know what, Fish, this, yes, you need to do this, but we have to go about the right way. Because if one person that's above him doesn't like the fact that there's someone in his unit that had a suicide attempt, I can lose my security clearance. And then that makes me lose my job. So I give everything to my commander. He made sure I remained as anonymous as possible whenever he's asking if this can be a possibility for me, just in case someone said no, and we need to know who that is to get them out. So he protected me in that. Uh, it took him a few weeks to run through the chain of command. He came back to me. He's like, all right, Fish, you're good to go. Start telling your story." So the first thing I did, I went on a podcast, one of my buddies' podcasts. We were officers together at the last PD I was at, and his podcast called the Ash and G podcast. Me and Sharon went on it, and I told my story for about 3.5 hours. And we talked, we got into it, and kind of veered off too because we're cops and we have bad sense of humor sometimes, real dark. And so I started that, and I started talking. I went to my very first PD. I got in touch with a therapist that does equine therapy. There's a place called R Watch out in the Dallas area that does equine therapy just for first responders and their families. So I linked up with them. I started telling my story out there, and it's slowly been snowballing to where I've been visiting different PDs and going to different conferences, and I tell my story. And then I had after I did the first podcast, someone came up, a couple people that listened came up to me and they're like, "Hey man, you should start your own podcast." So, all right, I'll give it a shot. So, I got, the cheap stuff that I could get, started doing a podcast, and that's where Surviving the Streets came from. So I have other officers, other first responders. I've had a couple of firefighters come on, and I would keep everyone anonymous if that's what they want, because a lot of them are still active serving, and they don't want their name and all that getting out. And we talk about mental health, and with each story, we're trying to break that stigma down, the bad stigma of mental health in the first responder community. And it sucks I have to keep them anonymous, but I understand because even today, a lot of them still don't trust their admin. They're scared if they go on and they talk about their mental health situations that they're going to get like a not fit for duty type of thing and have their badge and gun taken away. So I keep them anonymous. I go and I tell my story, and I've been doing this now for about 14 months, and it's been one hell of a journey. I still have my bad days. I actually did a podcast whenever I was having an anxiety attack, just to try and show people a little bit what it's like. I was coming down from an anxiety attack. I hooked up all my equipment. I was like, all right, guys, I'm just going to be real. And I talked about what was going on with me. So I try and keep everything as raw and as real as possible whenever I do a podcast and whenever I come speak at different events. But I mean, like I said, it's been a hell of a ride, and I've enjoyed every second of it. And actually doing it as it's therapeutic as well, talking about it. And it's amazing because every time I speak at a conference, I usually get 2 to 3 people that contact me, and they're like, "Hey, can I talk to you? Because I'm going through something right now." And so I'm like, "Yeah, I'll if I'm driving home, I'll pull off to the side of the road and I'll talk. I'll listen, and then I'll talk to them and stuff, and try and guide them to whatever help that they need to go to. Because I'm not a professional. I'm just some guy with a story, but I try and do my best to, try and let them know that they're not alone. And the fact that they're reaching out they were actually stronger than I was at the time because I never reached out. I reached for the gun. So that's what I've been doing now. I'm hoping to start a nonprofit soon. I have a GoFundMe out there right now to try and raise money so I can start a nonprofit. And the nonprofit, what we want to do, because as a veteran, we have the VA we can go to. It's not the greatest thing out there, but it's something. But as a first responder, once you retire from the city, you got nothing. Like they're like, bye, thanks for your service. Give us our key. And that's it. So we want to start a nonprofit mainly to help the retired guys get the therapy that they need. And then we'll open it up to, active guys or anyone that has ever been a first responder, currently serving or not, just so they can get the help that they need. We want to do is I already talked to some therapists and they're on board, but give the financial assistance because therapy is not cheap. It's not at all. So we want to provide that for people. So we're trying to. My goal, that was my New Year's resolution this year, was to get that started. But it does cost money. I'm in the military. I'm enlisted. I don't make much money as an enlisted guy, and I have bills to pay and child support and all that. So it's slowly getting there. We're slowly getting there, but by the end of this year, we'll have it up and running. That's my goal. But yeah, that's everything. That's the majority of my story right there.
That is extremely powerful, Nate, and thank you for sharing your journey with us and with the other people that you've have had the privilege to be in your presence as well. One of the things that I and everybody here knows that is one of the big things I say is me too. Like so much of what you've said is relatable to all of us here and me as well. And I could have typed in or responded me too about every third sentence of your entire
Yeah.
thing there. And so it is all relatable to all of us. And I have a whole list of things that I'm a note taker and I have a whole notebook worth of crap here. But we'll start going through some of the other people that may want to respond or ask you questions. The one thing I'd like to ask you first, is there anything off limits that you
everything's on limits. The only thing I don't talk about is what I currently do in the military because then I have to go to PR and all that crap.
Gotcha. Cool. So we'll start with Mark. Mark's got his hand up. Okay, buddy.
I can relate to your story, Nate, in more ways than one. And I could probably share my story for about 20 hours.
Yeah.
And as I assume you could too. What I'd like to do is Sarah Carell has my email address. If you can give that to Nate, and then in any way that I can push out to my network in terms of, because I studied in emergency services administration, I've been getting more involved on LinkedIn and just kind of push out your information for the podcast that you're starting. So
absolutely.
Get the word out for that. I would love to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Nate, are you able to drop your contact info in the chat? Is that something you're comfortable doing?
How do you do that?
Oh, damn.
I'm not technologically savvy at all.
If you press chat, are you on a computer or your phone?
I can do it.
Okay, I see it.
I can do it for you. Do you want me to just do all your links or are you good, Nate?
Yeah, if you can do it, because I don't have any of that saved on this computer.
Yeah, I got
this is my very first computer.
All right.
I'm not that far behind you, buddy.
Yeah.
Not that far behind you. Me too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else want to comment or ask Nate any questions before I go on my soapbox? Go ahead, Terry.
So first of all, I appreciate you telling your story. A lot resonated with me as well. I would also, if there's anything that I can possibly do to help, I would love to be a resource for you. And I absolutely loved the fact that you were helped by horses and you were able to pick up on the fact that they weren't coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going through a really difficult time, I also own a horse. He ended up with stage level 3 ulcers, front to rear, feeding off of my level of anxiety.
Oh, wow.
since I recently went through the program with 22-0
Mhm.
for the PTSD, my horse now comes to me running and he's licking me like a dog.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw the horse picture behind you.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's another horse person for me.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Do you have a lot of horse people out here except Parker? Parker doesn't like horses.
Yeah.
Not into it. Todd, go ahead, bud.
Hey, brother. First off, yeah, thanks for coming on here and sharing your story again. Cop, firefighter, a lot of parallels. I spent a lot of time not talking to anybody, and if you weren't a cop or you weren't a firefighter, I didn't want to have anything to do with you. And a lot like you, I reached for the gun. My old Colt Combat Commander, 4.5-pound trigger pull. I tell people I don't know how many ounces of trigger pull I had left that night, but I don't think it was much. And I think people like us that have lived through coming that close, it's a unique group to have been that close, to being another statistic. And I'm glad to hear that you're including firefighters in what you do. That's awesome to hear. One thing for your fundraiser, you might want to look at Fund the First. They're kind of a go anywhere for specific for the first responder community.
Okay.
And I'm sure that they'd be more than willing to help you out there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll look you up on LinkedIn and connect up, and anything I can do to help you out, brother.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just started a LinkedIn account today because I had so many people tell me I needed one. So I just started that.
You do for sure. And it's funny because I was, while you were talking, I was trying to find you on LinkedIn and I couldn't. So what's your,
I don't know how to use it.
I have his info on the chat, at least the other, like his email and his
perfect.
different links.
Cool. We'll find it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd and Angel. You're up.
Well, brother from another mother, obviously. Very shared similar stories. It was the same thing. We get to a point where you isolate yourself, you thinking that, I've got this, your tenacity just says, or maybe it's your ego or your pride. You just, no, I've got this, I'm okay. And you shut down and you withdraw. And all of a sudden you find your spiral, this centrifugal spiral starts happening and you get sucked in.
Yep.
And then when you start hitting rock bottom, yeah, it is, you get to a point where you don't know how to get out. I didn't discover horses. I grew up with them. And it wasn't until I was actually working with corrections with inmates on a horse program that I realized how therapeutic the horses were. For me, it was my own escapism. But yeah, it was, I learned something totally different when working with inmates and helping them heal. That's when I got my epiphany. Because already being a horse person, I just knew I had to check out to be able to, be able to thrive. So I'm really grateful that you found that outlet, and that you had the wherewithal, the know-withal to understand, hey, there's another life form that's picking up on me too. That's really awesome. And yeah, like I said, yeah, keep sharing your story. Really do.
Absolutely.
I do have a question for you. When you're doing this, I noticed that you've held your composure this whole time you've been telling it. Have you found that it sometimes with some of the details, do you find it sometimes will re-trigger you?
Yeah, especially when I first started, I would have a hard time. Usually what I do, like I forgot my note cards. I have everything on a note card because whenever I start reliving it while I'm telling my story, I start really just going off in different directions and I forget what I need to say. And so a lot of times I had to come back, and my fiance went with me one time whenever I told my story, and she's the one that came, but hey, we need to go home. We need to write this all down on a note card. That way you can have it in front of you, because whenever I do it without the note cards and stuff and I start getting triggered a little bit, I'll immediately go to somewhere else during a different part of my story, and then I have to revert back. So it makes the story really jumpy. So yeah, like I'll relive it. The hardest part for me um, is the first 5 minutes after I tell my story, especially at a conference, because then everyone's just quiet, and I'm like, do they receive it correctly? Do they think I'm weak? I start feeling all these emotions again, like how I felt like whenever I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want to lose respect and all that. Those emotions start coming right back. And then every now and then, though, whenever I tell my story, it'll trigger some anxiety afterwards. One that I think it was just like 2 weeks ago, I told my story at a police department, and it went great. And then I was driving home, and I had to text my fiance, it's hitting today, and I had to make it home and like calm down and all that. And she came to me and everything, and we worked through it. But yeah, it still hits, from time to time. Sometimes I think I'm going to be good, and then all of a sudden, right then and there, it just triggers. And then sometimes it doesn't trigger at all.
I respect you sharing your vulnerability with us. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, I put Nate's LinkedIn profile in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks.
I don't know why you couldn't find it, David. I
Uh,
found it in like 2 seconds, man.
I'm computer illiterate.
Yep.
David, you're not alone. I couldn't find it either, and I just tried to connect with you, but you're on premium and I'm not. So,
Well, it says message and then it says more. Click on more, and there'll be a option to connect.
see, we're all
Thank
still
you, Todd,
learning.
for schooling us in the cheat sheets. Yeah, so I'll want to go to Parker as well. The one thing I wanted to bounce off of Angel was telling the story is exhausting, and I think when you get to the end of that day, you get it's exhausting, and when your brain gets tired, it starts to do its own thing, and you need that sleep time for it to heal again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting. Yeah, it's those things definitely come back up. Those moments come back up.
Oh yeah. And one
honestly,
thing
good.
As one thing I notice whenever people reach out to me for help and I'm talking them through it, that gets very taxing as well, because then I'm helping them go through their stuff and it's bringing up my stuff at the same time, and that gets very taxing.
I have found though that sometimes that the tiredness I get and then the reliving, I almost enjoy it because I can relive it in a safe place and kind of reconcile some of the things that maybe haven't been reconciled yet, and move forward from there. So I actually, after talking about my own story, sometimes I enjoy those moments of, wow, that shit really sucks, but look where I am now. Yeah, it gives you that opportunity to express gratitude to yourself, to find that grace in your fall, to realize how far you've come. That's Parker, you're up, buddy.
Wow, like, is there anybody on this group that's not a horse person? Jeez. Where to start, man? Appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, I'm not a first responder, but like so much of your story resonates. I'm like, man, like David said, me too, been there. I had 4 suicide attempts before I finally figured out God wasn't going to let me take the easy way out. One of which, my 1911, man, put 7,000-8,000 rounds through it. And that's the only time that it ever acted up. So definitely feel you there, being not wanting to be vulnerable, taking it as weakness. But vulnerability is a great strength. So appreciate you sharing your story. Also got a little experience in podcasting. So if you ever need any help, let me know.
Awesome.
And I don't know what part of Texas you're in, but I'm down in the Houston area. So
me too.
I'm in Porter, but I work in Conroe. So
Oh, okay.
Would definitely love to link up, have some chats. A lot
Absolutely.
of common there. But I think David is waiting to talk. We'll pass it back to him.
All right.
He's like holding his
Yeah,
tongue
all
over
good.
there.
You're the one rocking back and forth like you're on a bull or something, buddy. Anybody else? Anybody else want to comment or ask questions?
I will.
Sarah, go for it.
Hey, I just, Nate, I appreciate you sharing your story. That's a lot. And I'm very happy for you that you have found your way out
Thank you.
to healing. You found that arena that helps you. And it is so fascinating to me, again, to hear the horse relationship come up again, because we have had a few conversations about horses on this. In fact, our very own Terry Peters is sharing her story on March 4th. And right after she shares the 3rd, oh, that's right, Thursday night, 3rd. Okay, so the 4th, excuse me, the 4th, I'm going to Saddles in service, and where we learned about the relationship, the equine therapy and the relationship. And I never understood that as much. So we're getting on the horse, and also my social worker friend who loves veterans, who does EMDR, she's coming with me. And my friend, very good friend, coach at the Honor Foundation, she's coming with me. So all three of us are getting on a horse, and we'll see how the horse likes us. We'll see
There
how,
you go. Yeah.
if they leave us or come to us, and I'll let
That's
you know
awesome.
too.
Oh, absolutely.
But I really wanted to thank you. And I just wrote in the chat too, that I do understand, when we share our stories, sometimes we do have vulnerability hangovers. And that is, if you have that after you share your story, you're not alone. A lot of us have felt like that after sharing our story. So just wanted to put that out there. And then again, I just want to thank you for having the courage to share your story, because that really is a gift for other people's healing and navigation. So
Yes,
thanks,
ma'am.
Nate.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Sarah. So I have a couple things that I wanted to bounce back to you. Outer space, seriously? I didn't hear more about that.
Oh man, it was just a childhood dream. I remember watching the movie Space Camp from the 80s, where all the kids end up going to outer space. I was like, I want to do that. And then my parents were always real good about like fueling whatever fire I had inside me. So, my mom and I would walk outside one night. It was probably like 2:00 in the morning. We saw the space shuttle re-enter. We were out in the Dallas area at the time. You could just see it looked like a shooting star flying across, and I got the bug, and it's something I always wanted to do. And like when I applied to NASA, I was a SWAT guy. I was a TACP. I was like, yeah, I don't have any of the credentials, but there's aliens out there. They might need some security. So I was like, I'll apply. So, and it was awesome. It was weird. It was on like usajobs.com. And that's where I applied. And they don't post there anymore. So
that's fantastic. I've always been fascinated by the whole space thing too. Living here, outside New York City, when I forget which version of the space shuttle it was that they now have on the top of the Intrepid. When they brought that up from Houston, before they landed at Kennedy Airport, they flew it up and down the Hudson. And we were on the Hudson right in front of the Intrepid as the 747 was going back and forth with that thing. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
Honestly, it's so cool. If anybody, when you're up in the city, you got to hit the Intrepid up and see the space.
Oh, absolutely.
Freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
The next thing you were saying, which I started laughing, I don't know if I saw it, was your story about your no-tell motels. We had them in the town I worked in. If you've never seen a 3-ring circus, go to a no-tell motel. It is insane. The characters that come out of those places, dude, the amount of books you can write just on that alone is freaking awesome. They're just like urchins coming up from the earth.
We'd have a lot of fun there. I remember there was one time where I was on a special unit and we all picked a number, and one number went which hotel, another number went what floor, another number was what door, and we just go knock and see what came out.
Yep.
And it was still some crazy stuff that you'd see just with random random door
Yeah,
knocks.
it's literally, I mean, you can't make the shit up that comes out of those rooms. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's great.
And let's see what else I have here. So on a more serious note, including your partner or going back to your partner, have you worked past the guilt?
For the most part, I still have my days, especially the month of June is really hard for me. But for the most part, I know there's nothing I could do. It was his time. Um, I still have my bad days every now and then, and I think it's something that's going to live with me forever. Uh, it's just learning how to deal with it, and that's what I've been doing.
Awesome. Well, if you ever need to work past it with somebody else, your home's here, my friend. And
I appreciate it.
we got you. I was so excited to hear that you don't drink coffee, and I thought I was the only police officer on the face of the earth that's never had a cup of coffee a day in my life.
I don't even
So
like
just
tiramisu.
Just like being a Jets fan, I now know another one. So
There
it's
you go. Yeah, I thought I was the only
appreciate
one.
that's awesome. What's your why?
My why? Like,
Yeah.
why I do this?
No, what just in life? What's your why? Like why do you exist? What are you here for?
Oh man, I don't even know. I've never been asked that before in my life. That's a tough one. Honestly, like right now, I'm living for me.
Awesome.
That's what I'm doing. I feel more alive. Like I used to. The only time I felt alive was when I was like hop, or when I was deployed, and I lost all that. And here lately, this last like few months, when things have really picked up for me, I was just talking to my fiance about this on my way to do this. I was like, I'm actually getting back to being happy again. Like I feel like I'm living again because now I feel like I have a purpose, and this. So
And
every
what do
day
you feel that purpose is?
I'm still serving. I might
See,
not be
that's the
serving
answer.
my community, but I'm serving those who serve my community now. So I'm still serving, and I, I guess my whole life I've just had that service mentality, and so yeah, I guess that'd be my why. I live every day to serve.
I love that. And honestly, there's another Me Too moment.
Yeah.
And I think all of us are probably not along to that one. And the reason I asked that is because it was asked of me, earlier on in this year, or not in 2022, in 2021. And I was like, crap, I don't know where to go with this. And the person that asked me was a friend of our group here, Chris Chandler Yates. And he made me think of it to the point where I actually had to go write it down. And I think service to others is kind of what we all relate to.
Mhm.
And the one thing that I learned over this past year myself was that my law enforcement experience, my EMS experience, all that was just an avenue to get there. So I think when we find that those avenues there are other avenues for that service, I think that's when we find our purpose again. So I'm glad that you've been on that upward spiral.
Yeah.
And you're heading in the right direction, which is awesome. And the power of our story, right? That's why we're here. Sarah's platform, but the power that beyond the title, it truly is such a powerful experience for yourself and for those that are hearing your story. So good on you for finding that on your own. It took this group for me to learn that and understand that.
Yeah.
So good on you for finding it, and thank you for sharing your story with us. I think that's freaking awesome. And I love the fact that you realize that the help for first responders is not there. That's something I've been working on myself, and I look forward to collaborating with you in some way offline.
Absolutely.
And expanding that discussion, because that's something that we talk about often, and that the military platform, they figured it out. On the police side and the law enforcement side, not so much.
Yeah.
And I can't figure it out. Here in New Jersey, we're starting to do other things, but you and I'll hook up and talk about that offline.
All right.
And let's see. Oh, and I think Angel was saying it about the spiraling down and going into a dark place and catching yourself to a point where you realize that you need to change and finding ways to turn that spiral and bring it back up. And I think we've all been in that place, and it seems like you've caught yourself and going back in the right direction. So your story is amazing, dude. So proud of you and proud to get to know you. And thank you for joining us. And we'll go back to Mark.
Yeah, I was sharing photos, said astronauts. My grandfather worked for Rockwell, and it kind of resonated.
Awesome.
I have all these photos here of space, like real photos from space, like actual.
Oh, that's cool.
So, hopefully Nate, one day, we can link up. I sent you a request on LinkedIn, and I can mail you a photo, from space, and maybe one of these. I have all these stickers from all the flights. He worked for Rockwell for many years and actually worked on, preparing for the missions and different things of that nature. And
oh, really cool.
Really cool stuff, man. I'd love to share one of these with you.
Absolutely.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. That's really cool.
Nate, you could still see if you could get on the Space Force.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is, like, now that there's a Space Force, the Air Force has just become the Coast Guard of planet Earth.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna be reusing that one.
Yeah.
Janet.
Well, first I want to say, you guys, like the space pictures of it, my cover on my book, those pictures are from NASA. I got permission to use them on my book cover. But on that note, Nate, thank you very much for sharing. I apologize for coming in late. I had my booster yesterday, and so I totally forgot about the time today. I had a nap instead. So, but this is the best group. I grew up, I got my first horse when I was 14, and she saved my teenage years. And then the rest are dogs and stuff. And now we house it all over the world and look after other people's horses. So
awesome.
And dogs and cats and stuff. But appreciate you being here. And I did get on to LinkedIn there. And thanks to Todd, I managed to find that more. I'm still learning too. But yeah, this group is the best. And we're all here together. So
that's amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they want to say or ask? I
Okay,
don't have it with Gregorio. Gregorio is always good for some serious words of wisdom.
This
Isn't
was
it his date night?
Yeah, I think it's
Date
is
night.
date
He's
night.
not here.
It is date night.
He ditched us for his wife. How dare him?
Oh, geez.
Jeez.
Ryan does the same thing.
Who else is Bill?
Nate, I can't, the only thing I can do on LinkedIn is just follow you. I can't,
Okay, I'll have to figure that
Go
out.
on those three dot or where it says more, there's the three dots and there's a drop down.
yeah.
okay.
Thanks, Todd.
I just
Were you
realized we lost
listening?
Michelle,
Were you
too.
listening during my lesson?
No.
And Janet, I just want to make sure that you knew that Angel is a fellow Canadian. So I don't know if you
Well,
saw.
I gathered that when you said so. Angel, whereabouts are you?
I'm home. No, I'm presently living in Alberta. I'm now at home. I just actually, believe it or not, I just came off the ice roads. I was doing a little
well,
ice road
I
trucking.
just
Oh,
got
wow.
home from the Yukon and I'm in Edmonton.
Oh, okay, there you go. You just came up from up north. Yeah, as I said, same thing. I was up way up at Nunavut doing some ice road trucking.
Oh, we'll have to talk about Nunavut. I worked there for 6 years.
Okay.
Okay. See, we're
You
all
sound a little
connected.
Irish to me, though. Are you a little
I
Irish?
wasn't sure how to comment on that, but your brogue is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Is that all Canadian? Like, Janet, would you say, oh yeah, that's definitely Canadian?
Do you know what? You go across the US and how many dialects or accents do you
We're
have?
perfect here. We have no,
Yeah,
we have no
right.
accents.
Right.
That's right
People say
between
have a
Terry and
Canadian
me, right?
accent. They haven't met a Newfie or an Easterner because they're.
You know, you're very lucky because about when I came back from Scotland, not a single soul could understand a single word I could say. Not like they're just going, I don't know what you're saying, but by God, it's cool. Keep talking. Like, wow, my whole life coming from an Irish Catholic family of 7 children, I was told to shut up all my life. Now everybody wants me to talk. Right?
Awesome. That's very cool.
Uh,
Well, since and Terry made a good point here. Since we are still recording, I think we should end our official time with Nate and just go to
Oh, can I
chat
say
around.
can I say
And
one more thing
absolutely,
while we're
please do.
recording? All right, so my last episode, I had on a Georgia police officer who's trying to push a bill through the Georgia Senate for workman's comp for first responders, and it's Senate Bill 484. And if we could push that as much as possible, because it goes to vote before March 15th. So it's on a timeline right now. So I've been posting about it for the last couple of days, and we did a podcast about it that's out right now.
Is that Georgia's? That's for the Georgia Senate, or that's
Georgia
for the US
Senate?
Okay.
Georgia Senate. Because
awesome.
right now there's 29 states that have workman's comp for mental health. Georgia is not one of them, so they're trying to push that right now.
Amazing. It's a big deal. And on that same note, there is currently a bill in the U.S. Congress for police reform, which doesn't have good markings on it, when you talk about it. But however, the one piece that they are adding in is a resiliency program and mental health training for new recruits and for out processing. And thanks to some of my New Jersey partners, that's going to be in there as part of the police reform bill for nationwide. So hopefully they get that through.
Yep.
So Nate, thank you very much for being with us today. You're a really special person. You're definitely a national treasure, and your work and your service is certainly does not go without being noticed. And as you continue to serve going forward in a non-uniform capacity, I believe you will find that just as fulfilling, if not more, because it doesn't come with a stigma or an identity. It comes with Nate. And that's truly what's most important. And so thank you for all that. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. And we're going to drop off for the evening. And if you want to stick around for a coffee chat, we can do that as well.